Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Warren Children and Books, an e-storytelling and creators online Q&A event. Thank you for joining us here in today's activity, either via Zoom or Facebook Live. This event is part of our Liberation War and Hope program, a series of events held in commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. We would also like to acknowledge, of course, the support of our partners, Adarna House, BuriBooks, Ayala Museum, and the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines for making this event happen. To start our program, here's a message from Mr. Philip Roskamp, the Public Affairs Counselor of the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines on our latest virtual exhibition and this supplementary activity.
Hello from the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. My name is Philip Roskamp, and I'm the Public Affairs Counselor. While I wish we could be together in person, it's a pleasure to join you virtually to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Philippines and the launch of this important exhibit. Thank you to the Filipinas Heritage Library through the Ayala Foundation for curating the collection of stunning images in this virtual exhibit, War Through the Eyes of the Child, accessible on the Google Arts and Culture platform. I also would like to thank Adarna House Publishing, the Roderick Hall Collection, Google Life Collection, Philippine Free Press, University of Santo Tomas, Dr. Ricardo Jose, Maya Calica Collins, Marcus Nada, and Earle Figuracion. Their generous contributions enabled production of this virtual exhibit and complementary activities, including storytelling, author and illustrator Q&As, and workshops. This year is a special one in the U.S.-Philippines relationship. While the ties between us began well before World War II, it was 75 years ago when we stood together, shoulder to shoulder, to win the Philippines' independence. At that time, an aggressor sought to impose its will over the Philippines and across the region through brute force and intimidation. We believed back then, as we do today, that nations should be free to determine their own paths, without fear and with their sovereignty respected. United by common values and a shared purpose, we resisted and we overcame. While there are World War II monuments and exhibits around the world honoring the brave men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice for freedom, it's less often we get to see war from a child's perspective, which this exhibit brings to light. War Through the Eyes of a Child depicts the profound and moving stories of the children who experienced World War II in the Philippines firsthand. These photos transport us back 75 years to view the war through the eyes and on the faces of children, Filipino, American, and Japanese, caught in the middle of global conflict and local chaos. In them, you'll see courage, fear, friendship, faith, hope, and innocence. These sorts of exhibits are important for several reasons. They remind us of the perils of war, help us to see world events from others' perspectives, and explain the roots of an alliance more than 60 years old. In a complex and complicated world where we are awash with new information, it's easy to forget the past. I urge us to remember where we've come from, as it's critical to understand where we are going to, as friends, partners, and allies. As you view this exhibit, I encourage you to reflect on the incredible challenges brave Filipinos and Americans, perhaps even your parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents, endured and overcame. As we navigate the challenges of the present, just as the children in these photos did 75 years ago, we should be heartened that it was not that long ago that Filipinos and Americans demonstrated to the world what we can accomplish together. We persevered then, and our steadfast partnership continues to serve both our peoples and the entire Indo-Pacific region. Thank you again to all who made this possible, and thank you for viewing this important exhibit. I hope it sparks conversation, reflection, and greater understanding. Maraming salamat.
Thank you for that insightful message, Sir Philip Roscamp of the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. Indeed, the war affected the lives of everybody, including children. Thus, we need to remember the contributions, their creativity, their resilience, their stories and experiences in these uncertain times that showcases the different aspects of humanity. In the latter part of the event, please stay tuned as we share with you the story behind the creation of our latest virtual exhibition, War Through the Eyes of the Child, the main anchor point of this program, which is currently on view on FHL's Google Art and Culture platform. Moving forward, let me introduce myself. I am SOFIA Santiago, the Associate Manager and Curator of the Filipinas Heritage Library, and I will be the moderator for today's session. I'm also an independent children's book writer and a teacher. I obtained my master's degree in education from the Ateneo de Manila University, and my research interests and efforts focuses on the role of museums and libraries in education and literacy. Let me also give you a brief background about the Filipinas Heritage Library. FHL is a Filipiniana library managed by Ayala Foundation, and its mission is to spark and stoke interest in the visual, oral, and printed story of the Filipino through its collections of documentary heritage materials in the form of books, periodicals, documents, photographs, music, videos, and digital resources. FHL has been organizing programs related to World War II, such as exhibitions, lectures, and film screenings in connection with the library's Roderick Hall collection of books and materials on World War II in the Philippines. These materials were entrusted to FHL by Sir Roderick Hall, a World War II survivor who has been generously supporting the library's World War II collection and programs. This is also one of the reasons we are inspired to raise awareness about the struggles and contributions of our people during the war. Hence, today, we will be witnessing a storytelling session with theater, voiceover artist, and storyteller Earle Figuracion. Earle is a multifaceted artist who received his master's degree from the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. In addition to telling stories to audiences of all ages across the globe, he has performed in plays and musicals in the Philippines and in Asia as well as with emerging work in the United Kingdom. He has also done commercials, TV, voice, and film work in the Philippines and internationally. He will give life to the story of Pitong, a boy whose family struggles during the Japanese occupation of the Philippines, as told in the book Si Pitong Noong Panahon ng mga Hapon, written by Augie Rivera and illustrated by Marcos Nada. This book was published by Adarna House and is part of the library's Roderick Hall collection on World War II in the Philippines. After the storytelling session, our wonderful creators of World War II children's books will be having a Q&A session. Hopefully, they will be able to answer questions regarding their process and the research they had to make to create two books, Goodnight Lala and Si Pitong Noong Panahon ng mga Hapon, that we are featuring today. To our Zoom participants, please feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A box below. All attendees are on mute to assure the quality of our audio during this session. To our Facebook Live participants from three of our pages, Adarna, Ayala, and Filipinas Heritage Library, feel free to type in your questions in the comment section of the live stream video. Questions that cannot be accommodated during the session will be responded to via social media or email at a later time. In case there are lags in the video or live stream, please stay on the session and just wait for it to load again. Now, let me call on Earle. Hi, Earle! To start our storytelling session today. Hello!
Hi. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much, Sophia, for that introduction and for all of those messages. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Muli ako si Earle Figuracion, isa po akong kwentista o isa akong storyteller representing Adarna House this morning. Ngayong umaga na ito, sabi nga ni Sofia, ay aking ibabahagi sa inyo ang kwento ni Pitong sa panahon ng mga Hapon. Ngayon, ating tuklasin, let's discover how different their lives were back then. Si Pitong, noong panahon ng mga Hapon. Isang kwento mula sa Adarna House na isinulat ni Augie Rivera at ginuhit ni Marcos Nada. Pitong scrambled up the mango tree to get a good look at what was happening. Oh, he clapped when he saw the fighter planes zooming in front of him. He even cheered when they sent the town hall up in flames. Pitong! Ay, Diyos kong bata ka! Bumaba ka nga dyan! His mother shouted at the top of her lungs, "Nandiyan na ang mga Hapon!" You know, that day, the war had already reached Tarlac. Many places were destroyed and conquered by the Japanese, including Pitong's town. Their fields were badly damaged, houses burned to the ground. Their possessions were confiscated. But for young Pitong, the war was like a special and exciting show. Oh, ayoko pong umalis dito, tatay! Pitong said stubbornly. Kailangan na nating lumikas. His tatay had decided. Doon muna tayo titira sa tiyaguring mo sa Malabon, kahit pansamantala lamang. Pitong wanted to argue, but his nanay hugged him tightly. Para na rin ito sa iyong kaligtasan, anak, she said, and put a rosary around his neck. At dawn the next day, they began their escape. Pitong wondered why his mother was rubbing charcoal all over her face and arms. She did this to avoid the Japanese, she said. But Pitong insisted that she put charcoal on his face too. With their small bundles, the family went to Manong Consejo, who was on his way to town to deliver pigs. They rode his truck up to the train station, going to Manila. Soon, the family arrived in Manila. Pitong held his mother's hand tight for fear he would get lost in the sea of people in Tutuban. A cloud of smoke hovered over the city. The smoke was so thick and so black that it almost covered the sun. "Banzai! Banzai!" shouted a battalion of Kempeitai nearby. Kempeitai are Japanese soldiers. At Plaza Lawton, his tatay carried Pitong on his shoulders so that Pitong could see the large map. A crowd was huddled around the map, and on the map, a man was sticking small flags with red suns in the middle. Minamarkahan na ng mga Hapon ang mga lugar na nasakop nila, his tatay said. The tranvia did not move that day, and because it was hard to get a kalesa, they walked, and walked until they reached the house of his Tia Goring in the town of Malabon. Mas maiging magkakasama tayo sa mga panahong ito, Manong, Tia Goring said as she hugged Pitong's tatay. Oh, maiksi ang kumot, Agapito. Kailangan ay matuto kang mamaluktot, she greeted Pitong. Mahirap ang buhay ngayon dahil sa gyera. Pitong could only wrinkle his forehead as he enjoyed his snack of boiled kamote. Pitong did not know that he would see his snack again at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The Japanese confiscated all their rice. Pitong's relatives were able to keep only a very small amount. Kailangan haluan ng bigas ng kamote o kaya'y mais, kamoting kahoy at saging na saba para dumami, his tia said. At first, Pitong didn't like it. He often threw tantrums and lost his appetite at mealtimes. But soon, he learned to like it, especially when his nanay prepared kangkong, sapsap, daing, balut, and alamang. In the days that followed, Pitong wanted to play in the street, but his tatay asked him to help him in planting onions, Chinese cabbage, and tomatoes in their backyard. Pipitasin na lang natin ang ulam natin, his tatay teased. His tatay taught him to catch bangus and dalag in the fish ponds around town. Pitong did catch something, a small gurami, and at home his nanay prepared a snack rice porridge with ground panucha. Oh, mas masarap yan kung may kasawang inihaw na niyog, Tia Goring added. One day, Pitong wanted to watch the parade of the Japanese soldiers in the plaza, but his nanay and tia brought him to the market. He noticed that instead of wallets, they carried suitcases. Hindi na po kailangan ng pera? Pitong wondered. Oo, iaalok lang natin sa mga tindera itong mga terno ko. Kapalit ng bigas, kamote, asukal o manok, explained his nanay. Oh, Pitong was amused at the unusual selling and buying that went on in the market. He was even more amused when he saw what other people had brought. Shoes, watches, radio sets, jewelry, pieces of furniture, and even a bed. As the day passed, and as the days passed, Pitong grew bored. He missed his favorite pastimes back home, playing tag with his friends in the fields, flying kites, and wrestling with his pet goat. His nanay noticed this, so she sent Pitong to a small school run by the Japanese. Pitong made many new friends. The Japanese teachers were kind, but before long, Pitong was not only bored, he was also confused. His tongue twisted when he spoke Nihongo. His body throbbed from playing sumo. And most of all, he didn't like wearing Japanese clothes and waving a flag with a red sun during the weekly parades. One day, on his way home from school, he passed a street corner that was a station for the Kempeitai. Ah! Pitong almost fell to the ground when one of the soldiers struck him on the head. He had forgotten how to bow his head. The Kempeitai always got angry when anyone failed to bow to them. In between sobs, Pitong thought of his tatay. Tatay never approved of his playmates striking him on the head, even as a joke. Ay, wag niyong babatukan si Agapito. At baka yan mabobo, his tatay would say. Baka hindi na yan maging abogado paglaki. Pitong felt anger every time he had to bow in front of the Kempeitai. who wore dazzling watches on both arms. He wanted to tell his parents, but he was afraid of what they'd do. So he decided to keep his anger to himself and not tell anyone what happened. One morning, the Kempeitai ordered everyone to gather in front of the church of San Bartolome. They made all the men line up, including Pitong's tatay. The people whispered when the makapili came. The makapili was a mysterious man with a bayong on his head. Though the two holes in the bayong, he would look closely at everyone in the line and point to those suspected of being guerrillas or enemies of the Japanese. Pitong's tatay almost fainted when the makapili pointed to his tatay. "Nagkakamali kayo!" she wailed. But all she could do was embrace Pitong, who was speechless as the Japanese hit his tatay with a gun. Pitong's tatay was taken to Fort Santiago. There, the Kempeitai tortured him until he admitted that he was a guerrilla, even though he wasn't. Many men did not survive the ordeal. After many weeks, his tatay and some other prisoners were transferred to Bilibid prison. Pitong's nanay decided to leave Malabon and live in a makeshift apartment that was a stone's throw away from Bilibid. Pitong stopped going to school. His nanay was forced to work in a hat factory. Their lives became even more difficult, but all that mattered was that they were near his tatay and they could visit him often. They brought him food and spent time with him. This was how their life went on until the end of the war. In 1945, the Americans came back to the Philippines. The Japanese surrendered, and the war ended. All prisoners were set free, including Pitong's tatay. Everyone celebrated their freedom. The Philippine flag, which had been hidden, was brought out and unfurled beside the American flag. There seemed to be a fiesta in every town, with all the parades and festivities going on. "Victory, Joe! Victory, Joe!" The people greeted every American soldier they passed by. Pitong, his tatay, nanay, and tia were part of the crowd who lined up again and again at the plaza for the food, medicines, magazines, chocolates, and canned goods that the Americans gave away. These had been banned during the time of the Japanese. The newfound peace and freedom brought joy to everyone. Many Filipinos felt that they had at last awakened from a 3-year nightmare. Now, the family was aboard an old train track on its way back to Tarlac. Pitong could hardly keep still. He wondered how his friends were back home, and will his pet goat still recognize him? Pitong was now 10 years old. He had many memories he wanted to relive, as many as the people who were crowded in the Tutuban station that they left. He thought of telling his friends about all his experiences in Manila, during the war, of course. Every detail, whether bitter or sweet or bittersweet, like the imported chocolate bar that he was now munching on. At yan ang kwentong pinamagatang Si Pitong sa Panahon ng mga Hapon, na kwento ni Augie Rivera at iginuhit ni Marcos Nada. Ngayon naman ay ibabalik ko kayo kay Sofia para ipakilala sa inyo ang manlilikha ng collection ng stories na pinamagatang Good Night Lala at ng illustrator nitong libro na binasa ko kani-kanina lamang. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat at magandang umaga.
Maraming salamat, Earle. Thank you, Earle, for that. Maraming salamat, Earl. Thank you for that very, very lively storytelling. For our attendees here in Zoom and on Facebook Live, so how did you like the book? Please put your comments in the comment section. Before we proceed to the second part of our session for today, let me tell you a brief background about our second featured book, Goodnight Lala. Goodnight Lala is a collection of short stories for intermediate readers, written by Corazon Ordonez Calica and edited by her daughter, Maya Calica Collins. It is set against the backdrop of Pampanga during the Japanese occupation. Young Corazon finds that wartime, though thoroughly dangerous, can also be a chance for wonderful adventures and enchanting experiences. These adventures and experiences were once the stories of Corazon, lovingly called Lala by her grandchildren, told during bedtime. They are now to be found on this book, to be shared and cherished by readers, young and old. Moving on to our Q&A session, let me introduce to you our panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Marcos Nada. He is a multidisciplinary artist based in Manila, Philippines. His creative work revolves around graphic design, illustration, street art, painting, and assemblage. Interactions with people, the stories they tell, and his habit of observing everyday life outside are very inspirational to his work as an artist. Discarded material, treasures to be found on streets, occasionally end up as his art materials. He is an artist by profession and a musician by passion. He is the illustrator of our first featured book for today, Si Pitong Noong Panahon ng mga Hapon. Also joining us, straight from Auckland, New Zealand, is Miss Maya Calica Collins. She is a published author of 2 chick-lit novels. She edited and illustrated Goodnight Lala, a children's book on her mother's experiences growing up during World War II in Pampanga. She fine-tuned her storytelling skills as a magazine editor for Cosmopolitan Philippines, 17 Philippines, Candy, Female Singapore, and Smile, the in-flight magazine of Cebu Pacific Air. Like what I've said, now she's based in Auckland with her husband. She pursued her passions for storytelling using words and illustrations. Maya spends most of her days sipping too much coffee, teaching art to kids, doodling in her sketchbooks, and sailing with her husband. Hi, Sir Marcos and Miss Maya. Hello.
Hello. Thank
Hi.
you for having us.
Okay, so sige.
Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.
Okay. So Marcos and Maya will now be taking in questions from our 3 social media pages and from our Zoom webinar participants right now. Like what I've said, please utilize the Q&A button here below and the comment section in our social media pages. Within the week, actually, we also garnered some questions coming from our followers. And the first question is directed to both of our panelists for today. How did you begin your research process, and what are the experiences you drew from to make this? Miss Maya, you may go ahead.
Okay. So in terms of research for Goodnight Lala, my main source was really Lala, my mother. And it was basically me asking her to retell the stories because she had been telling that to us over and over in the dinner table usually. So I interviewed her again. And if there were parts in terms of timeline historically that I wasn't clear with, I would do my own research. I would check in also with relatives who were alive at the time, like uncles and aunts. And also a lot of researching. I would go online as well and to look at books just to check in. That would be my main thing.
Okay, thank you po, Miss Maya. Marcos, How did you begin your research process? And what are the experiences you drew from to make the illustrations that we saw kanina?
Actually, researches are mostly on books because at that time, di pa ganun kalawak yung pwede mo ma-research over the internet. I also drew inspiration from my childhood experiences growing up in the province that I can relate to, not necessarily regarding this war, but living in the province like Pitong. So I drew memories from, I drew inspiration from my happy memories living in the province. And
Salamat po. Second question also came from Instagram. So how did you balance out the heavy theme of the book and accuracy of its message with age appropriateness for children? Can you cite examples from the book? This is for Sir Marcos.
Actually, the book is very, the story is very heavy because it was a story of Agapito growing up during the Spanish occupation. So parang I balance it with lighter side dun sa story na binibigay. Like, for example, I'm going to show you. I actually found yung originals ng book na drawing. So, ayan. So, yun. So, for example, this is parang they were traveling kasama ng mga baboy sa truck. As you can see, yun nga, dinumihan nila yung mga mukha nila para hindi sila ma-recognize ng mga Hapon. But you can look dun sa detail na to wherein yung isang baboy is licking the face of his father. So parang light lang. Actually, hindi naman siya sinabi dun sa story. But then, I add light, parang mga light na parang pwede mong pagtuunan ng pansin dun sa picture habang binabasa mo yung story. Isa to sa mga example na pansin ko. Meron din akong isang page. Actually, ito rin. Maganda rin to, interesting. This is actually a page wherein ayun, yung makapili na tinuro yung kanyang tatay. Teka. Yan. Tinuro yung kanyang tatay. But then if you show the Japanese soldier hitting his father with a gun, medyo violent siyang tingnan. So I made it a point to parang hid it dun sa labas ng frame wherein dun, ito yung vantage, ito yung nakikita ng makapili. Actually, ito yung bayong na may butas. So parang may mga part doon na tinatago ko para naman hindi maging sobrang graphic ng illustration. So nakakatuwa din kasi nire-revisit ko yung illustration and naalala ko yung mga parts na ginawan ko na solution para hindi naman ganun kabigat yung visuals na makikita mo din sa book.
So doon nga natin makikita na kailangan balance siya talaga given na kailangan sensitive yung atake natin kasi bata yung main audience natin dito sa mga libro na to eh. May question coming from the Q&A section. This is from Miss Dorothy Novicio. It's directed to Miss Maya. So how do you create and eventually assign a name to the main character in such a way that it becomes relatable to the reader? Lalo na siguro very personal din to for you yung project na to kasi it's the story of your mom. So how did you also make sure na relatable siya even to any other reader na hindi naman talaga kilala yung mom mo personally?
Okay. Actually, I'll try to think of how. I think if anything, kasi first of all, I didn't intend to publish it for a wide audience. The intention was really for my pamangkins, for the next generation. So if anything, to make it relatable, I was just very honest. I guess the emotions, kasi these were stories that I heard over and over again while I was growing up. So I wrote it coming from a place of, I was also a child first when I first heard those stories. So siguro just be very, very honest. And I didn't try too hard kasi I was basically repeating yung words ng mommy ko. So that's why whenever I would show her the manuscript, she'd say, oh, parang you were there rin, Maya. I said, mommy, these are your words. So I guess if my advice is, if let's say you're interviewing someone that you'll write about, make sure that the words you write are authentic to what that person is trying to say. Don't try to make it too flowery. If they say it a certain way, put it down. Kasi we as readers or as people, we relate to the integrity of true emotions. So we don't have to cover it up if it's real. We don't have to do much. For me, that's especially with the original story. Editing will come later, but the original, it has to just really be as honest as you can get it.
I think, ang galing nun. Kasi, yun nga, for creators, di ba, nakaka-overwhelm yung ang dami nating gustong ilagay na information, but I think the core of it talaga is to be honest and truthful to the story. Lalo na given this very personal nga yung story na yun. So we want to give justice to the truth.
That's true.
Diba? Okay, next question. It is to next question is this, directed to Sir Marcos. So, ano yung thought process mo when you illustrated the books? And how did you prepare illustrating the book? Did you prepare a mood board? Paano yung proseso in short? Can you give us a glimpse of that process briefly? And this question is from Nazarene Sunga.
Okay, magandang question. Actually, inaalala ko rin ngayon kung paano ko siya ginawa. Well, yun nga, like I said, I drew inspiration dun sa mga childhood memories ko. Also, it's weird, or parang naalala ko, when I think of the Japanese occupation, I always associate it with color green. That's why when you look at the drawings from the book, it's predominantly green, yung green yung tone. Ayan. Ayan. Maybe it reminds me of the uniform ng mga sundalo ng panahon ng Hapon. So what I did actually is, okay, I'm going to show you the cover. Yeah, yung original cover. As you can see, medyo makintab siya. Okay? That shiny layer to it is actually a tint of oil with oil paint with linseed oil na sobrang nipis lang. So I drew the illustration and then coated it up or layered it with a thin layer of green, so that it's like as parang, if you think para siyang for example Instagram, wherein you can filter some colors or adjust the colors. So ito, nilagyan ko siya on top ng green. I painted it with watercolor, okay? But I was actually thinking na if I'm going to use a fine brush drawing the outlines, it would be very hard for me to do that detail. So what I did is I drew it using a pen, a black pen, scanned it, and then adjust the color in Photoshop, and then printed it out in a watercolor paper. As you can see the bleed from the oil sa likod. So I printed it, the outline, I printed it in this watercolor paper. And then afterwards, I painted it with watercolor. And then after that, yun nga, the glaze, it's actually called the glaze. I glazed it with a green layer so that magiging uniform yung mga pages with a green tint. And this one, I keep it green talaga. And then light lang na watercolor. So yun.
Ang proseso, nakita natin yung preview, no? Yung step by step siya talaga. So, nakita nyo gaano kahirap yung pinagdadaanan ng kada pahina ng isang libro. At ang ganda nung glimpse na yun. Kasi hindi mo naman yun malalaman pag nakita mo lang yung, 'di ba? Pag nakuha mo na yung final product, nakita mo na yung libro, hindi mo naman malalaman yun eh kung hindi mo i-explain. At saka yung interesting din doon, in-explain na per page siya. Yung process nyo per page. But meron ba kayong portion sa book na naka multiple pages na siya in one? May mga ibang pa kayong books na ganun yung ginawa? Or yung personally, yung process nyo is per page nyo siya gagawin? Then eventually it will come into one whole book.
Actually, I start with the manuscript, and then binabasa ko mabuti yung manuscript, and I try to key in yung mga phrases or sentences doon na parang it will encapsulate the spread or the page. In illustration naman kasi it's hard to balance yung text then and illustrations. That's why if you can see, pakita ko rin itong page na to. Ayun, papakita ko yung page na to. May full dito na drawing, and then here meron namang vignette nung charcoal, because parang napaka-symbolic din ng charcoal dun sa text. And if I would just draw this part, hindi naman natin mapapansin. Parang ang ganda rin i-highlight ng charcoal so that maganda rin na gumawa ng vignette so that there are space for text that will not distract you from the illustration. Actually, when you illustrate, it's not necessarily you're kind of like telling a story also behind the story. So hanapin mo yung mga parts na, uy, parang interesting tong bigyan ng kulay or bigyan ng visual. Pero parang lagyan ko kaya ng iba pang story behind that na wala naman dun sa text. So yun nga, agaya nito, di ba? Meron namang may part na, uy, parang dinidilaan pala nung baboy yung mukha ng tatay. So, yun, when I illustrate, yun lang, tinitingnan ko una yung manuscript, binabasa ko, and then, hinahanap ko doon yung part na magandang i-illustrate, and then, afterwards, yung illustration, nilalagyan ko pa rin ng additional na parang kwento din, na parang hindi mo naman mababasa, na parang, uy, parang interesting din na parang may story behind the story.
Ang galing, ang galing. Nakikita natin na dapat talaga jive or nagko-connect talaga yung illustration tsaka yung text.
Tama.
Kasi hindi mabubuhay ang isang children's book na in that manner kung illustrations lang or kung text lang.
Add lang din ako, Sophia, hindi ko nasabi. Kasi when you illustrate na nakikita mo yung text and then yung image, and the text is kind of like the same talaga kung ano yung image. Parang it's very redundant. So parang hanap ka ng interesting na parang point dun sa text na mahaba and then lock into a specific still, like a photograph. Ano yung mag-represent ng buong story ng isang image lang. Because if you're going to illustrate all of those that is said in the text, parang nagiging redundant lang din yung text tsaka yung image. So yun. it's a kind of a way to balance it. Para interesting basahin din yung text. Interesting din tingnan yung illustration.
Okay. Thank you. Ang dami nun. Loaded yung sagot. Loaded yung sagot dun sa mga tanong na yun. Ito, this question naman is for Miss Maya. Kanina siguro na ano na natin yung solution. So, babalikan lang natin. Were there problems in depicting stories of violence to young readers? May mga ganun ba ikaw na inisip na i-add dun sa Goodnight Lala? Or it's more of talaga depicting siguro paano pa rin naisabuhay nung nanay mo yung kabataan niya even in a troubled time?
Yeah, a good question. Kasi like what you said, Sophia, the perspective I focused on was really my mother's telling the story. And syempre, she started telling us this story when we were kids then. So she wouldn't tell us gory details. You know, parang she spared that, she spared us from hearing that kasi her focus was, in spite of it all, it was enjoyable. Sabi niya, parang it was the war. But I think like what Pitong said in the book, parang it was still enjoyable. Like my uncles would talk about the dog fights. Parang it was a Netflix show. They would just wait for it. So it wasn't like my mom never mentioned the fear of getting killed, even if it was always there. I remembered one of the stories kasi was they had to leave early in the in the early morning. It was very dark para they won't get spotted. And they were walking through the mud. And she said it was so much fun. She was about 4 years old or 3, playing with her youngest brother. So I felt I didn't have to cover up details kasi the way it was told rin to me, it wasn't in a way that I was spared the truth. Maybe the truth, that side, because all I could see was what she saw as a 4-year-old to 6-year-old in the war. So she made it easy for me to tell it kasi she told it to me the way she felt it as a child. So there, if that makes sense.
Meron. Ngayon, may follow-up eh. May follow-up dun sa tanong eh. Given na may ganong notion tayo na dapat child-sensitive siya, na we should always be honest with truth, with the facts that happened during that time period for it to be historically accurate as well, and syempre mas kompleto siya. Ngayon, how do you mediate exposing both the sensitive part and at the same time making it age appropriate? Is it about limiting the focus of the topic? Is it more of about that? Yung sabi niya, I noticed that in Si Pitong, a lot of harsher, more dramatic things could have happened. Like, what if the father disappeared or his hometown was destroyed? So ngayon, the meat of the question is, how do you now mediate as a creator? And especially for Miss Maya, since you are retelling the story and at the same time illustrating it. Yung sa side naman ni Marcos, after answering this question, Miss Maya, yun na lang. Ano yung internal mo siguro na gauge to mediate both things?
Okay. Actually, now that you mention it, kasi we did about 8 stories here, but my mom told many stories. And there were stories that were a little harder to communicate to a young audience na I didn't include. Like, for example, my grandparents were almost going to be, people were digging a grave for my grandparents. Like there were soldiers threatening. I didn't write na about that, but I know the story. So as we grew up, parang in a way siguro I worked as an editor. Kasi that's my first profession. I'm an editor. So I could see, okay, this one is easier to communicate about climbing up a tree. or and all that, or fishing for frogs in the paddy field. Siguro, yun, I was able to have a sense of this was the war. but there's something enjoyable in spite of the darkness of that period. So it was being picky of what stories I was going to feature to put in the book. There.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Miss Maya. Sir Marcos, how did you mediate now? Same question.
For me, it's about focusing on or obscuring from some details dun sa image. Like, yun nga, like for example, dun sa part na may bayong, nakatago yung parts na medyo violent. Or if you notice dun sa book, yung mga Hapon laging hindi pinapakita yung muka. Putol lagi siya. So parang, I don't know, maybe the memory yung mga Japanese is medyo soldiers medyo kakatakot per dun sa iba. So lagi siya lang well. For the cover, sige, pakita ko na example para for example, sa cover, nakita niyo yung dogfight sa taas and then nakita niyo yung mga binabomb nila. But then I made it in such a way that the smoke from dun sa bombings is actually Pitong's hair. So parang, as you can see, hanap ako na Pitong. Ayan, gano'n talaga yung buhok ni Pitong eh. Ayan. Pero yun, yung mga details sa mga gano'n, I try to hide it or not focus too much on it so that it won't look very graphic. I also have had advice from the publisher and also the writer. So meron din silang mga input yan because this is actually, creating a book is, like for me, for an illustrator, it's actually a collaborative process between the publisher and the writer. So meron din silang mga input dito na binigay na parang, okay, sinunod ko when I'm doing the illustration ng book. Ayan.
Ang galing nun. Kasi katulad yung hat ni Miss Maya while creating it is an editor. So she had siguro in her na ano ba talaga yung i-filter. Tapos on the other side naman, makikita din natin yung isa pang atake that you really need other people to help you out in sifting details, to mediate which should be there and which should not be there. At yun yung sinabi ni Marcos na it's really a collaborative effort between the illustrator, the writer, and the publisher itself. Okay, this is for Miss Maya. What prompted or inspired you to pursue writing for children in this context? Given na ang dami niyong writing background, bakit niyo pinursu tong project na to? Aside from the fact na you wanted to tell siguro the personal story of your mom.
Okay, so the main reason is I wanted to share my mom's story. But the reason why I really went for it was time sensitive because my mother was very sick. So she had a very weak heart, and it was, the doctors were saying at some point she will be too weak to even brush her own hair. She was in the hospital a lot. So it was more of like, if I don't talk to her now and get all the details, I might not get that chance. And my sister, one of my sisters actually said, my kids ask about their grandparents a lot, and they were based here. They're based here in New Zealand. So she said, Maya, why not write down mommy's stories? And even if we all knew it, having her there talk us through it again, that was the main reason I kind of sped up the process. And but I would love to keep doing children's books and stories. I just haven't had another chance. But it is, very personal reasons, but personal reasons are very strong reasons to follow through with the goal. So,
thank you. Now, this is for both our creators today. So how do you weave the conversations and dialogues in your stories so that every scene remains fluid? For example, how do you transition from happy scene or a childlike scene to a gory or scary detail without losing the objective to create empathy on the part of the reader naman? So ngayon may layer na siya. Parang how do you now effectively communicate that message? Parang ganon. And this is from Dorothy Novicio. Thank you for your question. Miss Maya, you may go ahead.
I was going to say, Marcus, please go ahead. Dorothy said Dorothy. Dorothy, thank you for a very challenging question. Okay. I think for me, in the case of I was going through my mom's stories. I said, "Mommy, please tell me what to say." I think the topics are all very they're kind of like very soft to start with. If ever I mention, I guess the way I would transition it I would say, if it is the afternoon of looking up at the dog fights, then I would say the dog fights were when this had happened. So I wouldn't really go into details about killing, about people can die in the dog fight, but I would just mention it as what it is. But I don't go into the detail because I think about the audience as well. That not that I'm shielding them, or maybe I am, but it wasn't that important to the emotions of my titos who were watching and just so excited about it. So I guess I didn't have, not like maybe with Pitong's story, it was tougher. And he got into the how the man in the bayong and all that. Me, I didn't have those. Maybe mine were not as sensitive. So I didn't use it much. I didn't have to, thankfully. So there. That's my answer.
Napaka-challenging ng tanong. But for me naman, well, parang wala naman masyadong concern on my part because it's parang mas concerned siya actually ng writer because I'm just giving life to the text. So I'm just going with the flow kung ano yung hinihingi ng story or ng text. I'm just there to edit yung mga parts because makikita mo naman na if all the illustration are light, parang it's flat. So you just have to create some tension, visual tension, so that interesting naman basahin yung story. Hindi naman parang one note lang siya. But basically, yun nga. My answer to that is it relies more on the writer who's writing or telling the story. I'm just there to complement kung ano yung sinasabi ng story or ng text per page. So yun.
Okay na. Okay, ngayon, moving to the next question. This is from Brusim Nada. Although we are not at a war, there are so many parallelisms between our experience right now during the lockdown or the COVID government lockdown pandemic and during the war. How do we, as guardians, as artists, as creators, make these trying times better for our children the same way Pitong viewed it? I'm
not looking at you.
Marcus, go ahead. Anyone?
I think, parang for me, telling stories about hardship and challenges parang supports us in our daily struggle and actually helps us into deciding what to do and not to do. Actually, every decision depends on each person naman. So mayroon tayong iba't ibang mga experiences na pinagdaanan wherein we learn from it and we parang we try to change things for the better. I think yun lang naman talaga yung yung important sa atin, na parang kung ano man yung gawin natin ngayon, let's not try to repeat yung mga pagkakamali na nagawa um, ng mga past na mga nangyari sa atin, and then we support kung ano man yung natin, kung ano man yung stand natin, and try to be firm with that. Iba't iba naman yung pamamaraan ng mga creatives, iba't iba yung pamamaraan ng mga tao. Just, the important thing is to be firm with what you believe, and then, hindi lang puro post lang yung ginagawa natin. Meron tayong ginagawa pamamaraan in any way we can to support or to achieve kung ano man yung pananaw natin sa current situation na yan. So always look at the positive things. Marami negativity, but if we support each other, that's what's important for me. At least for me.
Siguro to add another layer to it also, telling stories is one of the ways on how you can make it better. Kasi there's
Definitely.
something, diba?
Yes.
When you pass it on to another generation to tell the lessons, meron ka nang actually ginagawa doon. So we just continue on telling stories. Do you want to add, Miss Maya?
Yeah, just a little. Actually, Marcus, thank you for going ahead. Because it was one thing, and I like what Marcus said about standing firm in what you believe. I do believe that right now, I said, who's that? Bruce Simnada. Right now, you're right about the war because of COVID and the lockdown. And I think while we're with our families, with our children, spend time with them really. Use the time together, not to be always online, because I realize that can be very toxic if all we see are people's posts, and a lot are going to be angry. Of course, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but unless you're firm in your own beliefs, whether it's about faith or what is true and what's important, you are going to be swaying back and forth, and you won't feel a sense of peace. So one way is with storytelling. You can get your kids together, you can tell the story, you can draw it together. Storytelling is very healing. And if you do some things that are actually not digital and get analog, get your hands dirty, that's a great way, especially since a lot of times if you're home, use that time. And that's also a good time for parents to start conversations with the kids without it being intimidating, because you're just next to each other. You're not necessarily looking at them. You could be shading something, and you can ask them, and they'll start telling you stuff that are going on in their lives. And I've seen that happen. So just realize that there's a reason for all of this, and it will pass, but make the most of it so that you nurture the relationships that count the most, which is really our families.
Thank you. To add to that, kasi may question din about the pandemic. This is from Mary Rose. How do you feel about keeping in writing or doodling in a journal or a drawing book about your day-to-day experiences, especially now that we are living in parallel situations, in unusual circumstances brought about by the pandemic? Do you think it will also help children not only express themselves through words and drawings, but also it can be a training ground for those who want to be future storytellers, writers, or illustrators? Miss Maya, you may go ahead.
My head is bobbing. Yes, I think that's a great question, and it's a great suggestion to get into the habit of doodling. And the reason why I was doing that is like I draw every day, I used to have I'm sure Marcus does as well. I mean, with his beautiful works. But when you have a journal, it keeps you, I guess you write down what happens, but when you doodle, it's almost like you capture feelings that words can't express. And it's happened so many times. Sometimes I'm doodling. I doodle when I travel. And minsan my husband will say, what did we do again on that day? I'll look at my journal and I'll have a comic strip about what we did. And he'll say, oh yeah, I remember everything because of that. So I think it's a great way to document what's happening. It's a great way to find humor in the situation. And, you know, family members can add to the doodles as well. So it can be very interactive. So go for it.
Do you want to add, Marcos?
So actually, I for one, I don't religiously doodle. Parang it's my awesome wife. Siya yung sobrang mahilig mag-doodle or gumawa ng diary. But I advise creatives also when I do talks na it's very helpful or it's very handy to have those visual diaries. Actually, gumagawa din naman ako, but not as religious as my wife. I also advise my students to do yung mga visual diaries because ang dami, parang you can document yung nangyayari sa day-to-day mo na existence or yung mga memories na baka makalimutan mo because when you just base it on photos, parang ang dami mo na naiipon na photos and it's lost dun sa dami ng mga photos. But a journal would help also marami. And when you look back at it, parang minsan, like for me as an illustrator, when I have a creative block, I just look at yung mga sketches ko or mga doodles ko. Minsan, hindi nga siya drawings. Meron siya mga text lang, ganyan. And when meron akong creative block, tingnan ko lang siya, uy, parang interesting tong text na to or interesting tong idea na to. Uy, bagay dun sa ginagawa ko ngayon. I'm going to use it. So, actually, iba-iba yung mga ginagawa ng tao. Some document photographs, some may mga diary sila, some sketch. Ayun. Pero it will come in handy later on. When you stumble on a creative block, most especially.
Ang galing nun. Ang galing nung nakuha ko na it depends on the person. Kasi, yun nga, katulad ng sinabi nyo, kung if you're more of a writer, important sa'yo to jot down details. If you are more of an illustrator, ang process mo is doodles. And yung iba naman ay, photographs. I think the most important thing lang is to document for you to have something in the back burner na pwede mong balik-balikan. And it can finally jumpstart your process.
Yes.
Pag na-stuck ka. Actually, we're down to our last 3 questions for today. This one is from Facebook. It's from Danny Pesayco. How important is the art style in the creation of children's books? How realistic or figurative should the art or the illustration be, especially with such a sensitive topic? And how do you think the art affects the children's experiences as a reader of the story? And I think this is still for both of you, since Miss Maya, you also did your illustration.
Yes.
Ayun.
I think like for the idea or the style of the art is really, again, a decision that's agreed upon by the writer, the illustrator, and the publisher. Because when I first came up with the personally printed book of illustrations, at that time I wasn't drawing as much, so I was sewing, and I was sewing the illustrations. It was very kiddie, like it was for a 3-year-old with, and now when I look at it, I feel like, yeah, it looked like it was done by a 3-year-old. But for Goodnight Lala, when I consulted with the publisher, and because they had agreed that I would do the illustrations as well, we agreed on a style. So I showed them actually drawings I would do. And eventually, so I had to sew them up. And so these are from I would draw it in the notebook and on my notebook, and then I sewed it onto fabric to before they could be photographed. So yeah. So style-wise, some kids will really look at the drawing first before they read, or sometimes it's not about if they can't read, of course, they'll want to look at the pictures. And then that's when they'll tell their parents, yeah, read the story. So very important. I really believe illustrations are equally. If not, they probably will grab readers before the words do. So they're very essential.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Shift na tayo. Marcos, how important is the art style? Alam ko meron kang sarili. Should it be realistic? Paano mo ngayon binabalanse yung being realistic or figurative and at the same time abstract na in the world of very, paano ko ba siya? Kiddie? Na magical and all of that.
Good question. Okay, interesting din siya sa ganun. Because Si Pitong Noong Panahon ng Hapon is actually my second book. So I was really just starting to illustrate children's books. Although meron na akong style, but then actually dinidevelop ko pa rin siya. For the style of the illustration, particularly for this book, it was like as Maya said, it's a mutual decision between the author and then the publisher. Then they have a say on how you're going to depict or how you're going to give life to the text in an illustration. Minsan hinahanap din talaga ng story. Like for this one, hindi naman pwedeng maging masyadong abstract na ganyan. Or although I have my own sense of anatomy dun sa mga drawings ko, but then hindi naman siya kailangan sobrang maging abstract or maging deformed kasi maybe the children will gravitate too much toward the illustration. Kailangan sinusupport lang yung text and then yung drawings. Also, for the publisher, especially Adarna, they kid test the illustration. So meron na rin input yung mga kids. But minsan magugulat ka na lang na what you think are parang gross sa atin or parang di maganda sa atin. Tuwa yung mga bata eh. So hindi mo din talaga malalaman eh. But it helps talaga kung collaborative talaga yung ginagawa mo because you can get inputs from different creatives or also the mga kids on how you're going to proceed with the illustration or the style. Basically, yun lang. I presented an illustration. I don't do detailed studies. Pero ayun. Sobrang natuwa din ako sa illustration or kung paano ginawa yung illustration ni Miss Maya. Sobrang nakaka-amaze yun. I mean, magtatahi ka. So parang, grabe. Parang di ko ma-imagine yung sarili ko magtatahi. Pero yun nga, there are a lot of ways on how to approach the illustration or present the illustration given the story, and sobrang napaka-charming and it's very humanizing also to see yung mga tinahi ni Miss Maya. Sobrang parang I think sobrang bagay siya dun sa story na parang it balances out yung text in how she deals or how she presented yung illustrations niya.
So makikita natin doon na iba-iba talaga yung ways, number one. And number two, kailangan maging audience, ka pa rin. You think about your audience, kaya nasabi nyo kanina may kid test. Tsaka, yung most important, collaborative siya. Kasi at the end of the day, important yung input ng iba-ibang tao para mas maging buo yung pamamaraan mo, paano mo maipresent yung story. Last question for the day. For both creators, what did you want Syempre may knowledge kayo na it's for children, it's for this age group. So as the creator or a part of the project of those books that we are featuring today, what did you want children to get or learn from the story?
Okay.
Okay.
To be fair, I'll start, Marcus, because you were going ahead of me. For Goodnight Lala, again, my starting point was to write, basically to remember my mother's stories so that the next generation of children in our family will remember her as someone who was also a child. She's not just Lola or Lala. She was a child like them. So in a way, I wanted them to just remember her as more than the elderly woman in reunions and all. Of course, she was very fun with them. So that was my main takeaway. But when I spoke to Adarna House and they made me see, oh yeah, this is going to be good because there's we need more stories like this. For me, I wanted them to just know more about what kids were going through, with showing them snippets of life in those days. And I think it was very interesting because at that time, one of my nieces asked me a question like, Tita Maya, in your time, were there already iPods? Diba? Mga ganyan. So I feel like, oh, during the time of Lala, guess what? There was nothing else but fishing for frogs. So parang that I got into that mode of telling them, oh, this was what happened. It was a different time, but it was an amazing time. And Lala thought it was amazing. And hopefully other kids will realize their grandparents had an amazing childhood as well. That for me is it.
Marcus, take it away.
Well, kids will be kids. Alam mo yun. Parang, for them, it's just an experience that they have to go through. Like I said, every experience is a good or bad, is a learning experience. And, you know, telling these stories somewhat gives them I'm not sure if most of the kids will understand it, but some of them can relate to what, like for example, Agapito is going through. Parang, oy, yan, masarap na manghuli ng isda, or yung mga ganun bagay na like for now hindi na na-experience ang mga bata. For me, yun din, parang yun yung maganda din sa story na to, is that parang it kind of gives you parang a different side ng like living in the city. Parang yung mga hindi na natin nagagawa ngayon. Well, marami tayong hindi nagagawa ngayon. But then, parang you're experiencing a life beyond what your experience is through reading those books. And you learn, hindi lang naman yung hardships yung mapapansin natin dito, but then mapapansin din natin yung mga ibang mga bagay na na-enjoy ng mga bata gawin. And yeah, that's very parang masaya siyang ikwento sa mga bata. Yung mga bagay. So yeah, for me.
Maraming salamat. Thank you both, Maya and Marcos. And thank you to everyone for sending in your questions. For those whom we haven't responded to, medyo marami pa siya, but we'll assure you that we'll be responding your questions through our social media pages. Thank you also to Earle, to our wonderful storyteller Earle, for telling the story of Si Pitong Noong Panahon ng Hapon. So thank you to our partners, Adarna House, our creators, Miss Maya, Sir Marcos, and Earle. Bye!
Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat.
Salamat.
Okay, for the last part of our program, but it's not the least, let me give you a quick run-through of our latest virtual exhibition, War Through the Eyes of the Child. As mentioned earlier, this is the main anchor point of the entire session that you just witnessed today. And it is part of our commemorative events for the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. This exhibition, you can actually access it right now through the Google Art and Culture platform of Filipinas Heritage Library. I'm going to start it by telling you the objectives of the exhibition. Why did we decide to show this story in this scenario, in this difficult scenario right now? Second, I'm going to talk about the challenges that I faced and that the entire FHL team faced in mounting the said online exhibition. Then I'm going to discuss 2 featured photos, and yeah, you can view the exhibition by yourself. Now, what are the objectives of the online exhibit? First, I wanted to show the story or the experiences of children during wartime, because most efforts that we are familiar with are explaining, let's say, the experiences of political figures that influenced people during the wartime, or let's say the experience of the soldiers who also lived through that difficult period. But there's a lack of representation when it comes to the experiences of the everyday individual, let alone children. And we need to give credit to these people because they also fought for their lives during that troubling time. So we wanted to see how they were able to cope and expose that story for us to have a more holistic understanding of that historical event. Kasi doon natin makikita yung mas maayos na pag-iintindi ng isang mahirap na karanasan or experience. In this case, the war period. Second objective is that we wanted to have a record of oral transfer of history. Similarly to the intention of Miss Maya by publishing a book about her mother's stories, we wanted to have that as well on our side as a library. Because, like what I've mentioned, usually these anecdotes are reserved to private conversations of, let's say, a grandparent and his or her grandchildren, or a parent and his or her daughter or son. And we wanted to expose that because that is part of the truth that happened during that time. Third objective is that we wanted to maximize the online platform that we have. Since Filipinas Heritage Library is a partner of Google Art and Culture, we wanted to maximize that avenue where we can actually reach more people outside of the borders of the Philippines. So, sayang yon. And aside from that, a lot of people are actually clamoring for relevant content. You have students stuck in their houses trying to learn. You have teachers currently creating modules. So we wanted to have that ready resource for these people to educate. So that is part of our educational mandate. Lastly, we wanted to highlight the shared experience between the Americans and the Filipinos during that time, and the Japanese, because all of these people experienced the war, World War II. Though from different vantage points, there is that shared experience that it was a traumatic experience, it was chaotic, but all of these nations survived after that. So, what are the challenges of mounting and researching about this project during the pandemic scenario? First, it was pretty challenging because I personally didn't have access to physical books that on a normal day are easily accessible if I had the chance to go to the library. So in this exhibition, I heavily relied on digital content, which is from the Retrato collection, the digitized books of Filipinas Heritage Library, and the digitized copies of Philippine Free Press from 1941 to 1947. So those were my main 3 sources for mounting this exhibition. So I triangulated and checked consistencies. And in the Philippine Free Press, publication that's digitized, doon ko nakuha yung individual anecdotes because there are articles about teenagers and children who actually experienced the war. In the exhibition, you'll be seeing that through the story of Martin Bantug. Moving on, ano yung what are the two main photos that you can see in the exhibition? I have here a photo of evacuees from Cavite. You'll be seeing that you have 4 children as main subjects. So you have the slice of life, perspective na kinailangan nila maglakad. Pero naglakad pa rin sila papunta dun sa kailangan nilang puntahan. And then another photo that I'll be highlighting is this one. You have 2 sets of children, one in the foreground and one in the background. In the foreground, you'll be seeing a kid carrying his stuff with this is actually, if I'm not mistaken, 1945. You have a kid carrying his stuff using a sack, gamit ang isang sako. Tapos may mga batang tinitingnan lang, observing. Ganun yung maraming images na makikita natin during that war period. Parang yung lahat ng tao, nag-o-observe lang talaga, trying to make sense of what was happening during that time. And to end this very brief curatorial run-through, you need to remember that the forgotten victims of war was actually the children, because they weren't really able to fully experience a normal childhood. Yes, they may do, and we are applauding that. Katulad nga nung depicted dun sa stories na feature natin today. Pero at the same time, we need to remember that they also fought for their lives. We need to give them credit of actually living through it, of having that strength to live through it, which is one of the main, or one of the core qualities of human beings. So we hope that with the program and with the exhibition that we just mounted, it will allow you to re-examine, re-evaluate your place in this parallel scenario right now, and to take it in and to have or be able to acquire that narrative in a more holistic manner, para mas maintindihan mo rin how you would respond and how you would react and how you would act for this troubling event not to happen again. Again, thank you for everyone for joining our program today. We hope you learned more about history, World War II, children's books, and the process of creating and illustrating a story. Again, we would also like to thank our partners, Adarna House, BuriBooks, Ayala Museum, and the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines for supporting this event. Please do not forget to like our social media pages for updates. Follow the Filipinas Heritage Library, Adarna House, Ayala Museum, and the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You may also subscribe to the BuriBooks platform if you would want to read more children's books from the Adarna roster. Please feel free to visit the library's website, www.filipinaslibrary.org.ph, to know more about our Filipiniana collection and to access our online library. For materials on World War II in the Philippines, please check out the Roderick Hall collection at rodhall.filipinaslibrary.org.ph. We would also like to invite you to our upcoming illustration and writing workshops facilitated by our panelists today, Marcus and Maya, respectively, on July 17 and July 18, 2020. Please stay tuned for more details. We'd like to hear your feedback. Please go to bit.ly feedback war and children, or scan the QR code to share with us your thoughts about this event. We would welcome them. We would like how you thought about them. So please keep those feedback coming in. Thank you again. See you on July 17, 18, 2020. Until next time. Bye!